Also a warm welcome from me to day 0 of CyCon 2021. It is a traditional workshop day. Today we have on stage 2 exciting presentations from our diamond sponsors, Fortinet and Leonardo. If you have not yet done so and want more of CyCon, you still can register for the next 3 days of presentations at www.cycon2021.org. Now we start with an interesting discussion from Fortinet's Chris Parker and Bernd König. How does industry run the equivalent of a combined joint task force with 450,000 users and 6 million sets of equipment daily? Like military organizations, also industry needs to achieve a common operational picture to optimize intelligence data and create safe and successful 24/7 operation. But let's start with a short video. Let me just introduce you the 2 speakers of today's presentation. It is Chris Parker. He's a retired lieutenant colonel after 20 years of service in the British forces. Among other appointments, he proudly served in NATO operations, for example, 2001 as the chief of staff for 2,700 troops at the NATO multinational brigade Charlie in Kosovo. He is now Director for Defense and Central Government for Fortinet in the UK. Bernd König served as 30 years in the German Federal Armed Forces, the Bundeswehr, now as a Lieutenant Colonel in Reserve, with specialization on high security tasks in electronic warfare, and he also served as IT security officer in the Ministry of Defense for the largest European IT outsourcing project, Hercules. Both have experience in military operation and CIS, as well as in cyber operations. In their informal discussion, they use military language on how this operational digital combined joint task force works from the industry perspective and what lessons can be drawn for NATO and the allies. Chris, Bernd, the floor is yours. Your presentation.
Thank you very much, everyone, and delighted to be here. My name is Chris Parker, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this workshop where we hope we've got something different. We're trying to very much aim it at the military delegate audience, but also to try and do something different today. And I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague, Bernd König, who has been accelerating technology for most of his career, a great expert. But Bernd, welcome to you.
Where in the world? In Germany, I can say good night because I'm sitting in the middle of a thunderstorm going down on me. I hope you can hear me instead.
We can, Bernd. It's a bit difficult, but we can just about hear you. We will work through the thunderstorm, and it's interesting speaking to all of you at home or in the office watching this. Bernd and I spoke this morning, and like good military officers, we looked at the risks. We thought, what can go wrong? And we actually discussed about web interruption and weather or other discussions things. So we know we have some contingencies for that, I'm glad to say. So let's tell you what we're going to do today in the workshop. We really want to boost along today for you to exploit next generation technology, to really examine what is there in the market and what is being used, and why specifically is it being used across the world outside of defense, and how can that help inside defense when we look as a sector. And I think really what we're trying to focus on is the lessons for what I think Bernd called it a brilliant title when he said that really companies like Fortinet and our clients operate as digital combined joint task forces. So again, you think about that in our NATO doctrine language, which most of you will be aware of, but for those of you who need a refresher, so combined being international, multinational, but also joint, so very integrated between all aspects, all domains. And as a task force, so properly integrated in command and control and other aspects to have the effect to defeat the threat. And I think you'll see that today. There's a lot of similarities between that. And we really have a defense in-depth system to secure the cyber domain across the world, but also specifically we're looking today at how across NATO, a defense in-depth, a layered system can work. And really what we want to do is try and take away 3 prime takeaways after today. And again, this is Bernd's great idea. He loves the way where you can say, why don't we tell people at the end and at the beginning what they're going to get? Because then there's no messing around. You don't have to wait. So our aim is really to make sure in 35 to 40 minutes, and there's some questions you can give, that you will know how thousands of non-military operations, 24/7, 365 days a year, operate as a digital combined joint task force. And really how the modern threat is dynamic, complex, but manageable. And there's some great things we'll show you on how modern threat analysis in the industrial and enterprise sectors is going on every day. And I think you might be quite surprised if some of you have never seen those aspects. And lastly, how a broad, integrated and automated network security really provides a defense in depth. And I think, Bernd, you'll comment on those, I'm sure, but I think the key takeaway there is about being the defense in depth, right?
Right, because I see a common similarity to the military wording, and there is a very big advantage if we talk the same language. And I will tell later on that I got the first time contact with defense in depth in IT, the year 2007, when we started with the Hercules project. But all for now.
That's great, thank you. So I thought what we'd say is, who are this strange company that some of you may not have heard of? Well, I found it amazing when I started working for Fortinet as to how big, but sort of unknown really Fortinet can be. And to say that, as you can see on the slide, we're now the largest company this year in network security in the world. And that is largely because of our obviously our market scale, and the investors are investing in us, they believe in us, which is great. But I want to really look at how our technology really has allowed that to happen. And by the end of today, you'll understand why that has happened, because the system is particularly strong. And Bernd, is there anything there that you will pick out for us? Any highlights there for me?
Yeah, 2 points. So down left corner, the 50 integrated fabric products. We don't want to do a sales pitch or something else. Don't be afraid of this. But the first time in almost 40 years of internet security career, I saw a fully holistic portfolio. And we will see later on what is the main benefit of this, the automation in it. And we will see later on why this is so important. The second point I want to point to is the 500K customers wide. So still growing and still widen our basic for learning and give more AI food into the automation.
Yeah, I agree. So it's a function of scale and size, really, isn't it? Okay. Well, I think really also for the delegates watching, if you've not heard of Fortinet before, don't worry, because there's also a virtual stand we got and we can talk about with you during the conference. But we're all looking forward to a great conference, and I've seen the agenda at CyCon. It really does look like a great show. So no military brief is ever allowed without mission and concept of operations. So Bernd and I thought we'd show you our very simple but brilliant company mission, which is to secure people, devices, and data everywhere. And it's very simple, but very broad. And it means that for us, we have a global remit to try and do this. And as a concept of operations, we really do that in 3 key advantages is what we do. And I think we're going to touch on some of these today, because these are the things that Bernd and I think with our military mentality that you will enjoy seeing today. And you can think about how some of those ideas and concepts can be used in defense today. And you see them at the bottom, those 3 there, the security fabric, which is very famous, but also the processes, and FortiGuard Labs. We'll explain some of those today. But any of those are your particular favorites, Bernd, or are you a all 3 man?
Yeah, as I mentioned, fabric is overwhelming me because I see from my operational responsibility experience how good this is if you have, for example, a gap of skilled people, and the gap is still growing. So it is important to have tools or a tool case where all tools match together, and you don't have to have no CISO, for example, like zoo with different people to have to take care of these exotic animals. And the second thing is the security processors. And I like to mention that Fortinet did from the very beginning on be alone developing and manufacturing their own processors. So we are fully autark from the Chinese production chain. So I think this is more important than ever.
No, I agree. Thank you. And I think really also for us to remind everyone, we're at an alliance event. We're delighted to be with NATO today and this week. But global partnerships, of course, in business go on all the time as well. And these are really important, just as they are to the NATO member countries as the NATO alliances. These major alliances you can see on the slide there in front of you are really important to us as a company, because by interacting with the information, and largely it's our information and intelligence, which is the driver here, but it's a whole cycle of ensuring the tightest and best possible net security across the world. And one thing particularly that I'd like Bernd to talk about is the Cyber Threat Alliance. Can you tell us a bit about that, Bernd?
Yes, the Cyber Threat Alliance was co-founded by Fortinet in the year 2014. And the mission is very similar to my personal mission. When I told people in some awareness talk or some educational evangelism from stage, for example, telecom security, I told my vision of a safer internet planet is that no one has to fear getting victim of a cyber crime. We are close to this point. The criminals are very fast acting, the threats are more complex, and the ability to adapt our defense measures is very fast too on the attacker side. But the first time in my life, I feel more than confident that we can win this constantly ongoing battle.
No, that's
and
great.
One more sentence.
Yeah, sorry,
Okay,
but I think those resources that they put out, I must say, I was not aware until I joined Fortinet as to how much the resources online from people like CTA are there. I mean, the resources archive, there's a link there on the slides for delegates if they want to look at it later or when they get the slides. But I think those resources are particularly good for a deep dive. You agree?
Yes, of course. And this is one of the advantages of this alliance we co-founded there, that we try to share our resulting analysis with other members and across all industries. So to condense the time of reaction, the lack of time of reaction we only underlay in the kill chain normally.
Okay, great. So I think what we'll do now is we'll try and take a bit of a deep dive into what this is all about. Why are we talking about digital task force? So let's firstly look at the situation in typical military speak. What's the environment? And there are some particular freedoms that industry has compared to what defense has. And if we look at the left side, we see that we remind ourselves, and those of us who've served in the military, especially those of us who've been out on the front line, the equipment has to be ruggedized. It's a very tough environment. So small equipment, like on the right, is just very much impossible. So also we have to have the transparent government procurement, and that causes us a lot of problems, we may think, but it's of course correct and fair because this is how democracies work in the West. So it's great. But also the legacy infrastructure we have as well. To the legacy infrastructure on a lot of military and alliance platforms will be now out of date, and some of it is going out of date. So there's some severe issues that can be addressed in defense in a more difficult way than they can be in the normal way of business and enterprise. And on the right side, you can see much more agile, new generation technology can come straight into play, and actually it can be automated and integrated very easily because that's what the market wants. So that's what they need. And if we think about what typically drove technology pre-2020, if we think way back to when both Bernd and I joined, and some of you, when we were younger, there was the Cold War was finishing or certainly running, and technology in the whole world was driven by defense. The funding was enormous, and there were some amazing technologies like stealth and other things that came out. But the space race also drove it, of course, that came out of all that technology, which we know. And I love putting this picture up because we're very proud in Fortinet that we secure NASA and the International Space Station as well. But what about the markets? What about where does the money come from? Now, this is one thing. I put this slide up deliberately to show just what is driving all this R&D. Why is it that defense is not able to ask for things and get them when the rest of the market is looking at elsewhere? And that's because look at the scale there. If you just take the global financial service industry, it is about 15 times bigger than the defense industry in terms of spend and need, and arguably risk as well, because they're doing live operations 24/7, of course. And so the spend and the drivers are really going to be in enterprise, business, banking, and such like. So defense really, and it doesn't make any of us comfortable to say it, is following and not leading in cybersecurity. But what about industry operating as a joint task force? It's definitely something that we want to get across. Bernd, I want you to tell us a bit about this. Why did you use this term, digital joint task force?
Because of my experience, when I have political on trade fairs or something else. So what is the challenge and what is the pain if you are driving a SOC, for example? Because there was a time in 2013 to 2016 when everybody, this buzzword, oh, we need a SOC, we need a CM, and so on. So to have a universal COP, so we want to have an operator of the cyber threat landscape. And I remember the former Minister of Defense, de Maizière, who asked me, so please, Mr. König, tell me about your Lagebild, but it's a German terminus for operational picture. And of course, you need an overlaying universal picture with the ability to drill down if having a SOC. So if you guarantee for your company or as a managed security service provider for your customers, the IT security for their infrastructure or your own infrastructure, you have different tasks and you have to have different specialists in your team of a SOC, for example, and you have to tailor the defense. You have to close the gap. If you identify that a vulnerability until today not is exploited in the real time, you have to have all knowledge about your infrastructure, about your segmentation of your network, so you can disrupt the attack via segmentation, your network, and stop the lateral movement of an attacker. So after this, you need, of course, the communication skill that someone communicates, okay, people, right now you can trust again the outcome. Don't fear that we are still
No, I get it. I understand. So really, I think what we're saying is what the great NATO aspiration, of course, at the moment is for a common operational picture, a combined alliance, common operational picture. We've achieved it, of course, in many military operations to quite a high degree. And I think back, and Colonel Franz Lanterhammer very kindly introduced us. And I was a chief of staff in Kosovo for a NATO brigade, and there was about 7,500 troops. And we had very big problems. We had a lot of multinational interfaces, and trying to build that common in picture was very difficult, actually. So for us, we found the challenges were real time, and a bit like Bernd said, there's this multi-agency, the zoo he talked about, lots of different animals trying to work together. It was very difficult, and alliance operations are difficult. So the technology in industry is used to make sure that those fault lines, if you like, disappear, and those gaps are closed. And cyber, of course, is in conflict, is a live conflict every day. It's just a difference in intensity going on. So I think the big thing we all need, and I always needed it in my military career, you'll all be aware of it, is that situational awareness. We get that from a good COP, a common operational picture. But also, we want that in the industry as well for all our clients. If you're the chief executive of a bank, you expect your bank to be seeing visibly all the threats and be able to mitigate them every day. And that's all around the world, wherever that bank is operating. So it's a very similar analogy of what we're using. And of course, that gives you in any crisis or near crisis, great advantages to lead and command and control. And that's why we think this great term that Bernd thought of, comparing it to the digital combined joint task force, makes it, I think, easier for us all to understand what is going on. And we'll talk a bit about that in detail in a few slides' time. But the one thing we have got is the Fortinet security fabric, which effectively is a layer of multiple products that all integrate and talk together, which is unique in the market. And that gives the classic layered network security system. So just like since ancient times, a layered defense is better than a single line, of course. So I think we've said enough really about the common operational picture, but I think also what we can do is try and look, and Bernd's going to tell us a bit about it, to look at the industry again. How do they particularly operate, and how do some of those things work? Bernd, tell us a bit about it.
Yes, as I mentioned before, it is the big requirement and a great challenge to design the defense process if you have limited amount of heads. So as I remember, as I was operational responsible for the data centers inside German armed forces, I had the feeling anyhow, how many people I got, as it was ever too less, because you had an all-day changing target and an all-day ever-going same task to protect your environment. And this against an attacker scene who was very agile, with complex and unknown attack vectors, for example. So it was difficult to get ahead of your daily stressful business into a planning process, to systems, enhance suits of your teams. And so there was a process design necessary to get lean enough to react fast enough. So same time, we're this 24/7 operation of protection against internet cybercrime, our threat intelligence platform, which is provided by FortiGuard Labs, is so amazing. They are so far ahead, produce lots of research outcomes who get in directly into intelligence and the beneficial co-working and automation of our security architecture. Tell it that, for example, SOCs are able to get rid of the boring routine of the always same incident response handling because my grandma clicks every day on the same phishing button. Yeah, so this is not what a threat researcher wants to do. Another point, to hold your people with an interesting job and keep them away from leaving your team to another team, yeah, who are signaling, oh, we are poor and our job is more interesting, for example. So the overlaying aim and mission is to keep ahead of the enemy, as I told before. And I'm confident we can do it right now. I think Chris will leave one sentence on the C4I star advantages, and I leave this slide with, again, these 4 steps: tailor the defense, close the gap, trust the outcome, and yeah, you have disrupted the attack. So you were successful, and as we know it from our military principles, gets the most access with the least effort and damages. But Chris, you wanted to say something for the C4I star.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Bernd. I just think, remembering my time when I was in the military on operations, the most difficult piece was always to find what was going on, that find function. And of course, we call it I-star, C4 I-star in a military expression. But when it comes to reconnaissance or finding out, there are a few things better than the amazing FortiGuard labs and things that we'll talk about, and we'll show a few slides of that shortly. But actually, I think just to remember that for the commanders, they want to see that clarity, that single pane of glass, as we call it, the common operational picture as the military aspires to. And I think this is one of the great strengths of the digital combined joint task force that is going on every day outside the military. So we said about staff branches. Let's have a look at a few of those staff branches, because intelligence, we all know as J2 in the military community, the challenges there are always the same. Doesn't matter since you're back to Roman or medieval times, how can you get that accurate intelligence? And I think really also a big challenge is the 0-day concerns. What happens when something happens elsewhere in your battle space or your environment or across the alliance in NATO's terms? How can we instantly, automatically keep up with that? And of course, human beings being a limiting factor, because humans in the loop, we know, are something that actually doesn't always help us as fast and as automatically as a good system. So I've asked Bernd just to say a few things about some of the solutions for this. Bernd.
Yes, you can see on the left side, the left and the middle row, a typical chain where all phases of this kill chain were affected and handled or managed successfully, touched by Fortinet security fabric elements. And you can see after the point of delivery, the FortiGuard anti-malware protection, for example, how many modules, how many portfolio elements are working together and are affected to bring this malware up to attention, for example, for the threat researcher who is looking on the screen. But before he gets into the situation to identify, is it false positive, real, and how I have to react, and have I to shift it to my supervisor, for example, the bigger skill. Yeah, you can see there are many sections. For example, FortiSandbox. Okay, box is not rocket science. The difference is inside. How fast is a sandbox? How accurate is it identifying suspicious, not known anomalies, for example? And then I want to point out FortiAI. And if you have doubts, is it AI? Because everyone is driving the buzzword AI today. And if you inspect deeper, you can see, oh, this is only machine learning. So our FortiAI is about 8 years and is able to read and to learn, and is based on deep learning and supervised learning. If you want to have more information about this, you can contact us in our booth later, or over the whole days of the conference. We are there with skilled people to get answering your questions. So and so on, and see that we are dividing this after exploitation, installation, sites about is an attacker using his advantage when he. So then is the point for action, a call for action. You know this word, and there are three basically big structured elements here: the FortiGuard, IOC, the FortiAnalyze, and the FortiZ. So working together, don't forget, all under operating system, with the main benefit and the big advantage that there are automated information extra, which are, you know, the benefit and advantage of big power, much more faster than inside a human acting, reacting, or sleeping guy who is after 6 or 7 hours not aware of a very good hidden exploit, for example. On the right side, you can see a small picture where we can see our threat. We can say COP. It's a real threat landscape picture, and the next slide will this much more detailed, and we can start the video on it. Can you click on this? Yeah, thank you very much. And if we start the video, which I took last Thursday, I think, just to make sure that underline the mystery of live performance, see what's going on in the world, and you are able, if to click on the link for yourself in your browser, to click in a country for your interest. For example, United States is more ongoing than in Estonia, which I started with. So there are, and see Germany. Yeah, it's quite calm last Thursday, but you see what exploits, what malware, what DDoS attacks, what bot armies are on the way. So this is a base of our infrastructure we have deployed to our more than 500,000 customers, and these are feeding this threat landscape. Of course, you can dig in deeper, and if you want to see more, or you want to get a member of the Cyber Threat Alliance, where you can share and can benefit of shared security information, then please contact us. We will lead you to the people who are in charge for this. So all of this information, including the visualization, is powered by our FortiGuard labs, where the brilliant heads of cybersecurity are doing this great work. So this for now. Chris, you can go on with the next slide, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I just think that whole sequence
No one can hear me.
Fantastic.
Hopefully.
It's great to hear and great to listen to, because
Chris?
I think one thing that the delegates can do. Okay. So I think the big thing for us to look at is that those intelligence and assessments, a lot of it is free online. So I would urge anyone who's working in NATO or in any of the member nation militaries to sign up online to the alerts from FortiGuard Labs, because they have the best intel feed on the planet. As Bernd reminds us, from over 500,000 users are going every day as to what's happening in the line intelligence. I think it's now over 6 million assets and that is bigger than the rest of the competition behind us combined. So we're very lucky to have that, but it's the true expertise that you'll enjoy and the reports. And I've taken a snapshot on this slide of just one of the many reports that came out on a regular feed about the big Colonial Pipeline, a recent incident in the United States of America. And I only choose that because that was one that I know a lot of us were interested in, and straight away I knew I could, from my desk, have a look at what was going on with the very best intelligence available. And that is something we all know in military world is absolutely vital. It's what we need. So I think really we're just going to touch on another couple of staff branches and then make some conclusions for you today. Other ones, really logistics. There are some big challenges. And again, there have been historically, if we think back to major conflicts, the logistics is always the weak underbelly. It's the weak part of a military armor. And that's the same in business, but also the same, of course, in the military. And the real risks to this, I can say, I know were profound. When I was chief of staff in Kosovo, we were particularly worried about our fuel, because our fuel depots were very thinly sustained. And if we had any problems there with sabotage or something, then we would be in big trouble. And today, I would have had to have been worried about electronic interference with that supply chain. And so that the problem has got bigger. So the need for security and other assets has, of course, got bigger as well. Bernd.
Yes, this is my part here, I see. I want to draw attention to the whole process. And as we know, we can't do it always only in hands. This is so, and more there are third parties, companies included into the process of bringing the goods into, for example, foreign mission to our troops. And it's good to have a single pane of glass and an automated approach for an anomaly detection. Think about the supply chain of a not deeply inspected supplier in your supply chain. So an attacker will know where is the weakest link in the chain. And so if you are not arriving at destination, all goods our troops need in their mission operation area. There's not only food, this is anything else. And of course, you will think on the loop paper. Then you can think, Germany doesn't need tech. They need only a pandemic to get stock with this. But
it was the same in UK. Don't worry, it's the same. Everyone ran out of the loop paper. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not the glorious moment we can talk about. But what we can talk about and what is really, really exciting, that all security responsible people who want to know how secure is my chain and where do I have to get more attention to secure, for example, this weak link, and where to put in more sensors, for example, then you are still at least at the same level as your attackers. I want to be ahead of them, and with all combined task forces we are able to join, I think we are still ahead.
Yeah, that's great. I think really it's a great point. And also, we never have enough troops or assets for securing the rear operation. It's like a fundamental of warfare. However, the ability to secure the rear operation automatically with technology removes that problem. So there's an enormous scope for securing the rear operation without the usual penalty of an enormous amount of resources. So this is the truly exciting thing. And I want to just touch on one last branch before we start to finish off the workshop and take any questions. So do think about any questions in your chat. Is the J6, the communications part? Of course, it's going to be part of a cyber presentation. But let's just think about that what is yet to come, about the Internet of Things, the amount of sensors, the 5G network is going to increase everything in our lives, including in the military domains. So the increased attack surface will need that increased need for automated, integrated, broad technology, which is what we always live by that in Fortinet, to give that through our Fortinet security fabric. And Bernd's just going to tell us a bit in a moment about that. But before that, I just want to tell you all about what's happening in some parts of Fortinet, where in the UK, we've managed to get secure SD-WAN and SD branch, for example, accredited to classified levels. So it can be used to remotely work up to highly classified levels, because it's been seen as so secure that it is acceptable to do that. Now, that is a bit of a game changer for a lot of deployed headquarters, for a lot of remote assets, for aircraft forces, but also the ability to send multiple levels of classification over one pipe. If you're interested in that sort of technology and what that might do, it's quite fun to talk about. Do try and visit the stand or ask us, and we'll try and get back to you and tell you about it. It is truly exciting. And Bernd, I'll ask you just to tell us a bit about IT, but also OT.
Yes, thanks, Chris. This is what I want to mention, and one of the last slides here is all the experience we could make about the last 20, 25 years with IT and IT security. It's very good covered all over, and especially very well protected by Fortinet Security Fabric, with all the advantages I told you and Chris told too. So what now with OT and the former known as IoT, yeah, the Internet of Things, and now operational technology? My feeling and my impression is that we are going to make at least the same mistakes as we did it 25, 20 ago with IT. And the learning curve is not transmitted and transported to the OT responsible people. And why? Because they don't talk the language, and they are very difficult. And if you are struggling now, okay, what is OT in my military environment? Our weapon systems are very well protected. Yes, of course, because maybe this was part of the process when the tender went out, and there were some sections how to protect the Eurofighter against cyber. Maybe he is very well protected, but think on the example, what about the fuel pump on an airfield with building automation? What is evolved over the last 40 years, renovated and redesigned and put in some cables and put in some batch readers for entry access management, for example. And what about the fuel pump? You can secure your Eurofighter as much as your budget is able to give. But if you don't secure the fuel pump, which is remotely accessible because, for example, service measures, this will be the weakest link, and with no fuel, no Eurofighter is starting. So this is a point when I talk to people, military leaders, of course, too, when they say, oh, wow, yes, you're right. And I see that there is a big discussion right now started. I'm very happy that the discussion started, because we don't dare to sit this out, as we say in Germany. Yeah? So we can't wait until we are broken on the floor, because things to renovate after total will, yeah, some say it's good to build something new from scratch on. But if you are in a crisis, for example, when this is used, you are desperately overwhelmed with it to do at the same time. So this is my my special topic with OT, And let me tell you that the Fortinet security fabric is securing OT at the same significantly high security level as know it from IT if you are using such right now. Chris, you wanted to tell something
Okay, yeah,
about
I think that's great. I think there's some other things that I just want to tell people before we wrap up, which is freebies. Everybody loves the freebie, the free things. And I'm delighted that Fortinet give out great free training, especially to our government employees, which of course includes the military, but also through our FortiVets programs for veterans, former military people, and their spouses get free training. So that's a great scheme. So if you're interested in those, please do look at our link below there. Training for Fortinet is a great thing for us internally, but also externally. And I know that Bernd has had 35 years, one of the most experienced cyber experts in the business. But Bernd, you were saying to me, even you love learning on this system, right?
Yes, of course, because especially in the last 14 months during the pandemic home office situation, I love to get free access to this, especially this NSE certification. You get very good made content, and you can decide for yourself when and how long you get your input, and compare this to even non-profit organ like ISC Square or ISACA, for example. Normally you have to pay a lot of money. That's one obstacle more. Yeah, you have your supervisor. Will you give me money for this? And he will tell you, okay, next year it is here for this. And so this is so great that you can 1 mouse far away, only 1 mouse click far away, you can get very good, well-prepared content to build up your skill.
Absolutely. And I must say, I really enjoyed it as well. And I couldn't believe the different levels and the depth of it that is available. It's truly impressive. But for us all today, I hope that's been useful. And I just wanted to reflect back for everybody just on what we offered to you. This slide, of course, we showed you at the beginning about the takeaways. We wanted to show you how thousands of large organizations across the world protect themselves 24/7 as a digital combined joint task force, which is what the military are aspiring to do and to be. They want to get a common operational picture, but that is available. We've shown you that through FortiGuard Labs. It is manageable daily and is done so by organizations around the world. So the technology is there today. Tomorrow's technology is available today. And we're delighted to talk to you about that, should you need to, on the conference or after. And also the last point really is about the fact that it's a broad, integrated and automated network security we offer. And we believe that is the modern day defense in depth. It is the layers, the levels of defense that are needed with the rising threat. And we have the virtual booth here at CyCon to talk about it more. And you can get in touch with ourselves or any of our experts if you wish to in the home countries. And also at NATO, we have an account manager, Karine van der Put, who's in Brussels as well. And she'll be able to contact you if you need any more on any of this through the email you see on the screen there. But thank you, Bernd, for your help today. I hope you enjoyed doing it today with me.
Yes, thank you very much, both of you, for your very engaged presentation. I have 1 or 2 questions, if you may. We have about 10 minutes.
Yes, of course,
left.
Chris. And I love the picture on this slide. If you are both bulk, like the bulk, which one side of the row. So hopefully.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks again, Chris and Bernd, for your engaged discussion right now. We have about 5 to 10 minutes time for 1 or 2 questions. I have one from Major Halistemir, who is asking, 5G is going to be used widely soon and it contains many cybersecurity risks in it. So does Fortinet have any projects or products related with 5G security?
Yes, thank you, Franz. I'll let Bernd say a short one. I know we're short for time, but the answer is yes. And Fortinet have just brought out the fastest firewall in the world just to cope with the accelerated need that 5G with the additional bandwidth. And so we do have that. We have that, those projects for that. Those are very transferable, of course, for military technology. So the answer is yes, but it's going to be such a great challenge for all of us. I don't know if you've got anything more, Bernd, to add to that.
Yes, I have a number for this because I know a tender right now here in Germany where we have the requirement to get a reaction time inside of a firewall of 4 microseconds. And this is needed for example, 5G on a campus. And yeah, as Chris said, we have the fastest firewall and we have the only one who is able to react in 4 microseconds.
Thank you. Another question was, you were talking about the J2, J4 and J6 staff elements, which are mainly there to influence the operational picture. What is with other elements, including social engineering and disinformation? How do they influence the operational picture?
Yes, that's a very good point. I mean, there are other staff branches which we didn't cover because of time, such as J1, manpower, and those sort of pieces where they will be covered by the CISO. Phil Quaid is our CISO, and he's speaking on Thursday. He's going to talk about that with manpower needs and how we can upskill all of us in the military and in the rest of the sectors as well. So that'll be useful for those of you on that. When you mentioned about social engineering and the other factors and influence operations, I see that as we are part of that solution, of course, where we are the technology part of that solution. But I would argue that if you know that your opponent has got the best technology on earth and the best security, then you are less likely to go and attack them. You might try and attack elsewhere. So I think by its very nature, the ability of tight security starts to deflect some of these other problems you mentioned. Bernd, I don't know if you've got anything to mention on that as well.
Yeah, I agree. And when I think on the staff elements, and you're right, we were less on time. J1, for example, personnel, leading your personnel is a part of staffing, and of course of then hold skilled people and educate them. So, and this is the next staff element, J3, for example, exercise, training, education. So if you see all these staff elements are of course still joining together as a task force. And we draw your attention today on the more technical aspects. And as Chris told, listen to Phil's keynote at Thursday, and you will see the social aspects of this digitally evolving world.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. A last question, maybe with a short answer. It could be a long answer, but I hope you have a short answer to that. Comparing military and industry combined joint task force, you explained all the similarities. But what do you see as the main difference between the military side and the industry side?
Yeah, it's a great question. In a very short answer, if I think back to that slide about the challenges we have, where we showed the wristwatch versus the heavy radio, I think it's in the procurement, and that's one of the biggest challenges. We have great enterprise agreements that allow excellent value, longer term engagements. These are the things that are going to be more useful going forward. And those are not done by the military at the moment, but they are done by civilian joint task forces, the banks and the big enterprises and other companies. So I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be in that commercial side. The technology is going to be shared, but the commercial part is one of the biggest challenges for the military today.
Yeah, again, very great insight, very great mind-opening discussion today. Many thanks, Chris, many thanks, Bernd. And if you want, and you mentioned it, Chris, if you want to learn more from Fortinet and its cyber posture and what Fortinet can do for you.
I can full agree.
You can visit their virtual booth on all the conference days throughout the CyCon here on our landing page. Just surf to the sponsors page. You find the button where you can directly link into the meeting room with Fortinet. And if you want to listen to more exciting talks and presentations and you haven't yet already registered, you still can at www.cycon2021.org. And now we have a very short break of 1 or 2 or 3 minutes, and we come back at 1700 Eastern European summertime, or as we say for as military in Charlie time. We have our next speaker from Leonardo Fabio Coccurullo, who will talk to us in the following talk. And thanks, Chris and Bernd.
Thank you.